The Gilded Age on HBO Max. This is becoming my new favorite show. I love period pieces. I love historical fiction, and it's very much like Downton Abbey, but in New York in the 1800s. This is right around the time of the Industrial Revolution, and so we're seeing all of these folks who are making fortunes through the Industrial Revolution, specifically through the railroads. So what you're seeing is this dichotomy of old money versus new money. So you have folks like the Astors, the Van Rhijns, and other families who have been in New York saying, since the 1600s, they will boast that their family came over on the Mayflower. And they are turning their nose up at people these new folks who are making money. The two main families, the Van Rhijns, Agnes van Rhijn, who is the old money, and Bertha and George Russell, the new money, actually live right across the street from each other. So not too much background, but I'm going to talk about episode 3 because that's where we are in the series right now. And it's just so good. I just wanted to do some reviews, and I wanted to talk to other people who watch this show. It's not for everybody, it does move a little bit slower. It's not the action and flash of a lot of shows that we're watching today, but it is extremely interesting. It's very thought-provoking. The character development is great, and it touches on history. And as somebody who's from New York, it's really cool to see what New York looked like in the 1800s. I mean, you see Central Park and the Upper East Side, and just to see what all of this looked like and how it came to be. So anywho, I'm going to talk about episode 3, which is called Face the Music. So there were 3 major plot lines in this, and so the first one involves George and Bertha Russell. So they are that new money, extremely wealthy. He's a railroad tycoon, and his wife Bertha's trying very hard to be accepted by society, even though they keep snubbing her. And they're going to learn that snubbing her was not the best move, because it's going to come back to bite them, not only them, but bite their husbands. So George, in one of the previous episodes, he's trying to build a railroad station in New York. And I'm wondering if this is going to be Penn Station. I have no idea. Correct me if I'm wrong, or if you guys have some other information. But he wants to create a railroad station in New York, because obviously that would be best for his business. He's building railroad lines that are going to compete with others, and that are going to go, up and down, I guess, the East Coast, going from all the way up from Chicago all the way down. And so obviously having a station would be great for his business. So he approaches these politicians in New York and asks them to pass a law that will develop this train station in New York. These are businessmen who are looking to make money. What George proposes to them is that they would buy shares of his business on margin. Then they would pass this law. Everybody would make a profit. They would get this money because they bought the shares early, and he would get the railroad station that he needs. However, they double cross him, and they renege on their deal, and they do not pass the law. Their plan was to buy the shares on margin, to sell them short, cancel the law, and then once the stock plummeted, they would buy the shares again, and they would double or triple their fortunes. So once George realizes that this is what they've done, he confronts them, and they pretty much, admit that this is what happened, and they think they have the upper hand. But George, because he's so smart and because he has so much money, he goes ahead and he starts buying all the shares that are on the market. Now, this is a risky plot, because he could end up financially ruining himself by spending all the money, all his resources on buying up this share. But he believes it's going to work. And when he talks to his wife, Bertha, about it, she tells him she supports him 100%. I mean, Bertha is ride or die. As much as she likes money and wealth and all of the accoutrements of his fortune, she tells him, do what you have to do. We did it once, we can do it again. Bertha is one of those characters, so when she does and she says things like that, you're endeared to her, because you're like, wow, she really supports her husband. She's confident. But she's also kind of not a nice person. And we see that she's a social climber. She is very much about status. She's, in one point, she even said, she's not interested in her old friends. She just wants new friends. So she just seems very laser focused on being accepted by the society. And I have to imagine that if and when she did, she would become snobby and look down on everybody else the same way that they're looking down on her. And so I have this love-hate relationship with her where I think she's a horrible person, but at the same time, I admire her, and I think that she's so smart and cunning and witty that you kind of have to respect it, right? And even her husband, I mean, he's a scoundrel in some ways, but then I like the way, he protects his wife and he stands up for himself. And he uses his smarts and his business acumen to get the better of those men who are trying to get the better of him. So, I mean, that's what I mean when I say I love the character development, because there's so many layers to all of them. I don't hate anyone and I don't love anyone because they all just are just so complex. So anywho, so he decides to go ahead with this strategy, and it works. And what's happening now is the aldermen. So we have Patrick Morris, I think his name is, and Mr. Fane. I can't remember his name. So these are the two main characters, and their wives are also two of the women who have snubbed his wife. So they're starting to face financial ruin because as he's buying more stocks, they're losing money. And it gets to a point where Mr. Fane tells his wife, I think her name is Aurora, that she needs to go and, no, it wasn't him. It was actually Patrick Morris who tells his wife, Anne, that she needs to go and speak to Bertha. She needs to beg her to have her husband stop this, because if he doesn't, they're going to lose everything. And of course, Anne doesn't want to do this because, she's always felt like she had the upper hand over Bertha. She never liked her. But, she doesn't want to lose her money. She has to do this for her family. She goes to speak to Bertha. And this was one of the best conversations of the whole episode. Bertha gives her the business. She tells her, do I owe you a favor? Like, why would I do this for you? You've treated me so poorly, and now you're coming to me asking me for something. Like, how dare you? And I know Bertha enjoyed every last moment of it. I mean, it definitely was, what she probably was waiting for this woman to come to her with her tail between her legs and beg her for something. And she tells her, you cannot make a withdrawal until you've made a deposit, and then essentially kicks her out of her house. So that didn't work. The next scene we see where all the older men are talking to George, and they basically came to him together as a collective, and he said, listen, we realize that, we tried to get over on you, and that, we thought you were a fool, when in fact we are the fools. Please just make this stop. And Patrick Morris goes so far as to get down on his knees and beg because he is so afraid of losing everything he has. But it doesn't work. George tells him that, you mistreated my wife, you tried to take advantage of me, and you got to be punished. The irony is, though, that George was going to stop. And so we see this kind of two scenes happening at the same time, in which Morris goes back home and he's dejected and sad, and you can get the sense that something bad is about to happen, like that he feels hopeless. And he has a conversation with his wife, which sounds like a goodbye. He goes upstairs and he kills himself. At the same time, we see George and Bertha talking, and George is essentially saying, okay, I've had enough fun with them. I'm going to stop buying all these shares and stop them, just short of them falling into ruin. But it's too late at that point because Morris has already killed himself. And this is where the history piece comes in. I mean, this happened a lot, especially, around the time of the Great Depression. A lot of people would prefer to die than to be poor, which says a lot. And there were a lot of folks, they said jumping out of buildings and killing themselves. And this is another example of what that looks like, how that actually plays out. And I thought that was real. I mean, it was tragic. The punishment did not fit the crime, obviously. And, my concern is for his wife. Now, granted, she did seem like a very nice woman, but you left her. And what is she supposed to do now? Now that she doesn't have you, and she, well, I guess they will still have money because George pulled out. But I mean, it just seems at the time he killed himself, he thought that they were going to be broke. So what kind of situation are you leaving your wife and your children in? I mean, it seems extremely selfish. But he felt desperate, obviously, in order to do something like that. So that was pretty sad. And we'll see next episode how this plays out, because obviously George and Bertha will be blamed for this. And if she thought she couldn't get into society then, she's definitely not now if they believe that she and her husband are the cause of this man's death. So that was one storyline. The other two were interesting. So we have Agnes van Rhijn, who is, again, I told you, that old money, who she's a widow. And she lives with her sister, or her sister Ada lives with her, and Ada is, never got married, never had kids, will probably end up being a spinster. We see a scene in which she is reacquainted with a man that she knew years ago, who apparently was courting her back then, but her father didn't think he was a good match. And it sounded like, maybe the families did not have enough money. Ada is entertaining it. You could see that she's feeling some butterflies and maybe feeling hopeful that she's her second chance at love. However, Agnes intervenes because Agnes is extremely smart and astute and perceptive. And she has a private one-on-one conversation with Mr. Cornelius Eckhardt and tells him, the reason my father turned down, sorry, I had a phone call. The reason my father would not allow you to marry Ada wasn't because of your state, your position. It's because you were overheard at a bar bragging about how you were going to marry her and you were going to get her money. And because of that reason, he did not allow the union to move forward. Now, obviously, there's truth to this because he doesn't deny it. He seems shocked that she has this information, and he agrees to leave because there's no upside in this. Agnes tells him, like, she has no money, she has no home. So if you marry her, you're getting nothing. And that was enough for him to leave. And poor Ada doesn't even know what happened. She's taken her sister's word for it that, he just had business to attend to, believing that he was being rude, not knowing that he had ill intentions for her. So I felt bad for Ada because it's like, she got excited all over again just to be disappointed. However, Agnes did do the right thing and protect her from somebody who would have been trying to take advantage of her. So now Agnes is, again, she's one of those characters too, where she's cold and calculating and dismissive and snobby, but she's smart and she's funny and she's protective. She kind of reminds me of like Cersei from Game of Thrones, where you question some of her behavior and some of the things she says, but then when you see how protective she is of her family, you respect it. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree with regard to Agnes and her son Oscar. Every week he has some zingers for her, and he seems to be the one person who can get the best of her and get her to shut up. This week he told her that he was going to have dinner with the Russell's son. I can't remember his first name. And she clearly doesn't like Bertha and George. So when he told her that, she was upset. And she said, you say things like this. It's like you're poking me in my side. And he tells her, well, it's a good thing that you have the skin of a rhinoceros. He is so funny. And he just leaves her deadpan. Like there's nothing that she can actually say after that. I really enjoy their relationship. He gives her the business and she just takes it from him. The two of them are so funny and fun to watch together. And in this week's episode, we learned that Oscar is actually gay. And we see a scene where he is in bed with his boyfriend and he has his eyes on Bertha and George's daughter, Gladys Russell. And he's telling his boyfriend that, he's probably going to pursue her and try to, to marry her because she has a lot of money. And she's also young and naive. So this would allow him to continue his lifestyle and, right under her nose. So in his head, she's an ideal match in that sense. Now, Bertha doesn't like it because she's not a fan of the Van Rhijns and maybe she doesn't think they have enough money or whatever it is. But Bertha's not going to let it happen. But we do see that this is something that he's plotting on. However, because all this stuff was happening with George and the law being rescinded, it was starting to look like George was going to be the one who was going to lose all of his wealth. And so once Oscar got news of that, he was like, well, I can't marry her now because she's not going to have money, because that was really his incentive. But now that we see that George has turned things around and he has gotten the upper hand and he will, in fact, continue to be a wealthy man and make more money, I'm imagining that Oscar is probably going to revisit his interest in Gladys. So that should be interesting to see. That was it. I mean, there were some other things going on, but those three storylines I thought were really interesting. And I'm reviewing this because I think it's just such a great show and I want to talk about it, but also because I do want to have conversations with other folks who watch this. You know, so if you are a fan, if you've been watching, please drop down in the comments. Tell me what you thought about this episode. Um, you know, add some historical context to this as well. You know, if there's some information you have about this era and the things that happened. And I know that these are parallels to real life families like the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers and things of that nature. So yeah, this is fascinating, as interesting. So I'm trying to find my tribe of people who are as equally interested in this, and we can talk about this week to week. So please do like and share, definitely comment, subscribe to my channel, and you can set your notifications so that you will get an alert whenever I post a new video, because I will be reviewing these week by week and we can have some really good conversations about it. So to all my Downton Abbey fans out there and other folks, please do watch and comment, and let's watch this together. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your Valentine's Day and your Super Bowl Sunday, and I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.